Today's session is brought to you by the Association of CMPs, the professional organization of certified nonprofit professionals. One way the association supports its membership is by hosting sessions on topics that are on the minds of nonprofit professionals and our CMP learners. This event are always free. If you would like to support the Alliance to continue these free webinars, check the chat. We've dropped a link for ways to donate. Thank you for your support. Now, my favorite part of the day is today. I would like to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Nicole R Smith, CVA. She'll share some insights and strategic volunteer engagements. Before we dive into today's session, I'd like to share a bit more about Nicole. Nicole is a dynamic leader and certified volunteer administrator with more than 20 years of experience in volunteer engagement, community outreach, and corporate social impact. She is passionate about empowering leaders, strengthening organizations, and helping communities thrive through meaningful engagements. Her expertise has been recognized in the Chronicle of Philanthropy and other leading publications, as she has partnered with organizations including Make-A-Wish Foundation and Volunteer Florida to share best practices and innovative strategies for leadership and community impact. Nicole brings not only a deep expertise, but also a genuine passion for building stronger communities and inspiring others to lead with purpose and impact. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Nicole R. Smith. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing anything anymore. Is it just me?
We can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay. Can I go ahead and start?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great. Sorry. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and talking about one of my most favorite topics, volunteer engagement. So give me 2 seconds. I am going to, we did this in rehearsal and it always goes great, but now I have to figure out how to do it live. And that's always the stress of sharing my screen. So give me 2 seconds. Okay. Can everybody see on the screen where it says strategic volunteer engagement, the missing link? Can everybody see that? Yes? Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to pull up my notes and get started. So thank you so much for joining me for this today. I'm so excited to be here. I'm thrilled to be here today. So a little bit about this session. Today we are going to talk about volunteer engagement and gain understanding of the 12 pillars of a strategic volunteer engagement. Learn how to align strategic volunteer engagement with organizational priorities, how to understand the benefits of general and skills-based volunteers, and how to use data and outcomes to demonstrate volunteer impact. The idea of this session today is designed to help you to start thinking about volunteer engagement differently. We're going to take questions at the end of the session, so make sure you're writing them all down, because a lot of times what happens is people will ask questions and they're answered in the presentation. So just in case, we're going to wait until the end, but we're going to make sure that there's time at the end for the questions. So I have a couple of questions for you. You can drop in the chat or by raise of hands, how many of you currently engage volunteers in your organization? Okay, it's a good number. All right. So my next question is, do you consider integral to the organization or nice to have? If you think it's integral to the organization, give a thumbs up. If it's a nice to have, put a heart in the chat. Integral or nice to have? Drop what you think in the chat. Integral or nice to have for your organization? Okay. Then the last question I have is, if all of your volunteers quit tomorrow, how effectively would your organization still be able to deliver on its mission? I just want you to think about it. You don't have to answer it now, but if you went into straight panic, this session is for you. Okay. All right, here we go. So I wanted to start with general understanding the benefits of general and skills-based volunteers. I know that I'm talking to a lot of people who already understand that, but just to level set, since we're talking about strategic volunteer engagement, and some people think about them differently, I just kind of want to give a overarching thought to the benefits of volunteering. You all are going to get these slides after, so I'm not going to read all of these, but I just highlighted a few of the ones that that I liked, right? So general volunteers, they help to support day-to-day operations and direct service, event support, admin help. I use a lot of admin volunteers in what I do. It helps to expand delivery and reach. And very importantly, it serves as an entry point for deeper engagement, including donor engagement. Oftentimes, your volunteers can become some of your greatest donors. So it's a great way to open up that entry point. And then on the skills-based side, they can provide specialized expertise. We've had skilled-based volunteers who were like into data analytics and created dashboards and graphs out of spreadsheets that made me want to suck my finger and crawl into a corner, like in the fetal position. And they saw numbers and data and were like, yes. And what they came out with it was phenomenal. And they did it because they wanted to. And it was such a win-win. So just thinking about things like that. Skills-based volunteers, they have more autonomy. And it's a potential pathway to board service, advisory roles, or pro bono partnerships. So just giving, like I said, an overarching thought and view as we get ready to dive into this. So today we're going to be talking about the 12 pillars of strategic volunteer engagement by way of Service Enterprise. It is a program that Alive has that helps to build organizational capacity through strategic volunteer engagement. According to Points of Light, volunteers are 1/3 of the U.S. nonprofit workforce. Taking time out to assess how our organizations are engaging volunteers is vital. These characteristics are those that support a well-rounded, healthy volunteer engagement strategy. It's divided into 3 major domains, 3 major parts. And so think about this for today. This isn't for you to get all of this and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing any of these things, or oh, I'm doing all of these things. I want you to think of it as an overarching picture, right? The purpose of this session is to bring these characteristics to light for you. As we talk through about each, ask yourself, is this happening in your organization? Do you see some characteristics that the organization you're with is already doing well? Do you see some of the characteristics that you may have room for improvement? Consider this just a starting point for today. Once you identify areas that you may like to improve, then we can dive deeper. But for today, we're just taking a high level of where your organization may currently be. Okay, so the first domain, establishing the foundation. So this covers leadership involvement, technology, funding and resource allocation, and planning. So this session, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions, just kind of getting the wheels thinking. Okay, so in terms of leadership, is your executive committee involved at all? Does volunteer engagement strategy come from the top down? In regards to technology, is your volunteer team still using spreadsheets to coordinate volunteers? And if so, why? Spreadsheets are a valuable thing, but a whole team should not have to be managing volunteers on spreadsheets. There's a blog post that I found, and I'm going to put in the resources, and it literally lists 19 different volunteer management softwares that are out there, and there's more than that, but there's all kinds of volunteer management software, from inexpensive to super expensive, whatever your budget can allow for. Some that are free, but there's things that are out there to help manage and organize volunteers. Funding and resource allocation. This is a huge one for me. This one is a huge one for me, because I believe that we need to invest in volunteer engagement and infrastructure, volunteer strategy infrastructure. So I ask, is there a budget item for your volunteer engagement? Does that budget item include funds for a volunteer engagement professional? There's this thought that anyone can do it. Well, anyone can design a graphic, but you don't want them running your marketing department. Anybody can make a budget, but you don't want them running the finances for your organization. So just because anybody can seemingly oversee volunteers, there's some skill that is involved in it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But my biggest thing is there money behind the volunteer strategy within the organization? Often, if you want to see how important something is to an organization, follow the money trail. So if somebody is saying that it's vital and there's no budget item, it's not lining up. Brooke Campbell, I believe is a CNP, she did a wonderful talk called The Hidden Cost of Free Volunteers. It is phenomenal. We'll talk a little bit more about it a little bit later. But then the last one I want to touch on here is planning. Is volunteer engagement included and or threaded through your organization's strategic plan? Does your organization consider volunteers integral, but they're not in this strategic plan? I ask, if that's the case, why not? So one of the things that we talked about at the beginning is, how do you align your volunteer strategy with your strategic plan? Well, here's another question. I tell them I'm full of questions today. It's all questions. It can be rhetorical or you can answer them. It's up to you. When was the last time you actually looked at your organization's strategic plan? I know when one of the organizations I was looking at, I was like, strategic plan, what is that? I didn't even know we had one. That's not a good sign. So if you want to align your volunteer engagement to your strategic plan, first of all, you have to know that one exists. And number two, what does it say? So I encourage you that if you don't know what it is or you haven't looked at it, go back and look at it and see, is volunteer engagement included in it? If not, I say go through, review it, identify areas where engaging volunteers can help to add capacity and extend mission reach. Then schedule a meeting either with your supervisor or whoever is responsible for helping to put that strategy together, and ask what it would take for volunteer engagement to be included. If it is included, then make it a point to review it each year, set department goals based upon the organization's overall plan, and then at the end of the year, demonstrate how it's helped bring the strategic plan to life. A quote from somebody who went through our service enterprise accreditation program said that by aligning volunteer roles with organization priorities, volunteers extended staff efforts, strengthened community relationships, and increased the reach and impact of services. So it is very important that you're not working in a silo, that whoever is leading the volunteers in that program is connected to the rest of the organization, because often it's siloed and over here by itself, and all of these other things are going on. Everything that the volunteer strategy is touching should touch the organization as a whole. So moving on to domain 2, volunteer engagement best practices. This bucket covers supervision and support, training, onboarding, recruitment, and cultivation. If there's anything that touches me as much as the funding, it's the supervision and support. So it is my strong belief that your volunteer strategy is only as strong as the leaders equipped with the tools to successfully implement it. And there are a lot of people who are leading volunteers who have never led people before. People need to understand that volunteer engagement is a profession. There are national associations dedicated towards it, such as Alive, but also VNPC in Canada and other countries. There are local associations that people can gather and connect and network and learn from. There is an accrediting body. People can get certified with their CVA, and there's individual standards. All of these things are what help to solidify the exact characteristics that define a profession. So thinking about that, where your volunteer strategy lies, or whoever's overseeing your volunteers, do they have the support needed to lead them well, especially if they've never led people before? If it is a profession, kind of think of it this way. If marketing is considered a profession, finance is considered a profession, on somebody's job duties is our marketing and finance aspect of it considered in other duties as assigned. Just a thought. Some benefits of skilled volunteer engagement professionals. Again, you'll get this. You can read all this later. I'm just going to highlight some. Some of the things that they do are translating goals into volunteer roles, training and equipping staff to effectively engage volunteers, because as we all know, volunteer engagement is an organization-wide effort, not just whoever's leading the volunteers. And this is my favorite part. They are highly emotionally intelligent people and are able to build meaningful relationships and volunteers, partners, and stakeholders. That's a nice way of saying that they work with multiple personalities. Not everybody can be thrown into a role who is equipped to work with multiple personalities. So just thinking about that, right? And then in terms of organizational impact, there's increased service delivery without proportional increase in staff costs, reduction on staff burden, fewer inefficiencies, and smoother operations. And lastly, greater organizational resilience and adaptability. So as you're thinking about what that looks like, even if you don't have a dedicated paid staff person to do that, even if you do have somebody where it's as other duties assigned, don't put them in this position without providing them the support and the tools that they need to be successful when working with their volunteers. So I'm back now. I'm off of my soapbox. I'm back. So the other parts of volunteer engagement practices, we're talking about training, onboarding, and recruitment. With onboarding, are there holes in your onboarding that you may not know about? Have you actually ever tried going through your own onboarding process? I ask you to try it. I did it with mine, and it was eye-opening. I was like, no wonder volunteers aren't coming back. Ha! The things that you can discover. One of the things I also did is I had a good friend of mine who volunteered with me at a previous organization, and I asked them to go through the onboarding process without any context, and then report back to me what their experience was. Did people respond to them in time? Did they get the information that they need? Did they get the tools that they need? Not in such a way to be like, aha, you weren't doing whatever, but it was literally like they're like personal shoppers to shop the experience so that we knew where to go back and make improvements. Not only onboarding for volunteers, but what about organizationally as the staff? Is meeting with the person who leads volunteer engagement efforts in your organization a part of the new hire onboarding process, so that they can learn and understand the impact that the volunteers have within the organization, how they help to move the mission forward, and their part in helping to curate the volunteer experience? Because like I said earlier, volunteer engagement is not just the volunteer manager's job, it's an organization effort. So if it's not in the onboarding process for your new hires, and you have that and you have the opportunity to change that, consider thinking about introducing it. And if you're the leader of volunteers and it's not in your organization, consider going to HR and asking if they would make it a part of the new onboarding process. I've had the opportunity to ask in 2 different organizations, and they both were like, you know what, that's a really great idea. So don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing they can say is no, and you're no worse off than you are right now. Okay, and the recruitment and cultivation. Everyone is always talking about recruitment, but let me tell you, if these other things are not in place, recruitment is a moot point. If you don't have somebody who has the tools to understand what onboarding is, how those trainings are supposed to be happening, tracking everything, et cetera, then what you're doing is you're going out, you're getting more volunteers, and it's like you're pouring water into a bucket that has holes in it. Recruitment is the last thing that you're thinking about. It's the last thing. It's making sure that all of these other things are in place so that when you finally, it's like you typically wouldn't invite guests to come over into a dirty house or a house that's not built yet, right? You go, you clean it out, especially in an upbringing that I had. My background is Latino and Caribbean. We were cleaning the house, and my dad was in the military, so it was like you had to make sure that it was spotless. Then people were allowed into the house because they're more likely going to say, because they can find things in the kitchen. They know where things are. Same thing with our volunteer strategy, with our volunteer departments and the things that we're doing. Is it in order enough to invite people in to make them want to keep coming back? Okay, third domain, impact and incomes. So this covers tracking, evaluation, growth and change, collaboration, and communication. So when it comes to tracking and evaluation, again, questions that I ask you: what data and impact are you tracking and why? Is this data connected to your organizational goals? Are you using the tools that are available to you? Are you collecting qualitative in addition to quantitative data? Hours alone aren't enough. Hours alone don't tell the full story. Are you gathering the stories of impact that have been happening, not only in the community that's being served, but within the volunteer program? There was one program that we came in, and somebody came in, and we were working at an organization that helped with addiction, and people would come in to help, and they left their mind, because they used to say, because it was addiction and working with people who were experiencing homelessness. And before they volunteered, they'd be like, oh, they would look at somebody on the street and like, oh, just get a job and you're just so lazy, et cetera, et cetera. After volunteering with the organization, the amount of empathy that they had, the amount of understanding, and their attitude towards these things completely changed. So those are the stories that you want to have. Are we tracking and telling those stories in addition? Because hours alone don't cut it. They're very sterile. Unless you're like a numbers person and you just like numbers, and it's like the Matrix, and you see, it's all these numbers and it paints a picture for you. Great. For the rest of us, we need the story. The great thing about tracking and evaluation, you can see when and where drop-off occurs. So just for example, if you're looking at your volunteer engagement and your retention isn't so great, people aren't coming back, as you're tracking that, you can see maybe it's at a particular time of the year you lose volunteers, or at a particular time of year you gain volunteers. And now you can make adjustments based upon the patterns that present themselves. Do you produce an annual volunteer impact report? Just a thought. Through communication, are you communicating to your volunteers the impact that they are making, and what's going on with the organization? So it's not only just communicating with the volunteers, but are you also communicating that within the organization and in the community? There's 3 different buckets of people that you're talking to. One of the big adjustments that we made was our volunteers, like our organization would make these big announcements, and our volunteers would come up to me and they're like, how come, oh, I just heard about this on the news, or my neighbor asked me about this. Is that what's happening in the organization? And, and it really made them feel like maybe they're not really a part, because they would feel like, how is it that you volunteer at the organization and I found out about it before you did? So I had some conversations with our marketing team and with our PR team, and when things are that we know that are going to be big and announced, and we know it's going to be on TV, we made sure to put it out in a volunteer newsletter or send an email to the volunteers as well, so that they felt equipped. So now when people are coming and talking to them, the volunteers are like, oh yeah, I knew that, or they can even expound and talk more about it, as opposed to being the last ones to find out, even when they're supposed to be an integral part of the organization. The one thing I love about tracking all that data is now you can make data-informed decisions, the DID, y'all, the DID, data-informed decisions. And those are the things that also can be communicated out. I wanted to dive a little bit into the communication one, just to kind of give some examples. So people might be like, well, where can I communicate all of these things? I know we're supposed to do it, but where? So different organizations, as you know, are set up differently. So there's, first of all, you can start with the volunteer newsletter. If you have a staff newsletter, submit that to the staff newsletter so that it can go out. We didn't have a staff newsletter, but once a month, I would send an all staff email, important updates from the volunteer department. Look at what the impact that we are making on the community. Because what I found is that within our own organization, people had no idea what the volunteers were doing and the impact that they were making. So I made it my point to make sure people know, and I added a little quiz to it. People got really invested when they knew that they could win things. Just saying. Also, social media is a really great way to share stories and what's going on. And then how? Share the stories and share evidence of change. So this is just a quick example of what I'm talking about. Here's one way to do it. Our CVA study group facilitators donated 30 hours last quarter. Great. Or our CVA study group facilitators helped to prepare nearly 30 leaders of volunteer engagement for their certification. 70% of those who participated in the study group earned and passed with their credential. Additionally, the CVA facilitators helped the governing body CCVA establish guidelines to help other organizations start their own group, which has exponentially strengthened the field of volunteer engagement. It's the same 30 hours, y'all. It's how you tell the story. Another example I want to give in terms of communication, I was talking about volunteer impact reports. A good friend of mine, Angela Williamson, CVA from Blood Bank of Delmarva, she puts together an annual impact report. Her thing was like, I don't know, I think it was like 8-10 pages. It was something. She went in. She was making sure everybody knew. You don't necessarily have to go that extensive, but even something like these first 3 pages, here's that impact, the value of the volunteer time, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and how it's contributed to the organization, the growth over the years. We have to start speaking up and talking about it and letting people know and understand what's going on, because only then, when people start hearing about it, can they start integrating it into other aspects of the organization and it gets elevated within the organization. But if we aren't sharing or putting it out there, how are people going to know? So let me talk to you a little bit about return on investment. We like to call it, in this particular part, the return on volunteer investment, the ROVI. So basically, it is the value of volunteers minus the cost of volunteer engagement divided by the cost of volunteer engagement. That gives you your return on volunteer investment. People who have gone through our service enterprise accreditation, but just even in general, not just us. Ours just happens to be that the confirmation and the affirmation of that. But organizations that have who have invested in strategic volunteer engagement have shown that they can expect a $3 to $6 return on investment. That is huge. That's huge. That's no small amount right there. Right? So, but if we're thinking about, again, if 1/3 of our workforce is volunteers, the 1/3 of the nonprofit workforce in the US is volunteers. That is a lot of time and effort. Why are we not thinking about this more strategically and on a bigger picture? That is, it's eye-opening and mind-boggling, but also exhilarating and wonderful, because that means there are those many people who believe in community enough that they are willing to raise their hand and dig in. So shouldn't we also do our part to make sure that if they are choosing to spend the most important thing that they have in their life, which is time, if they're spending their time commodity with us, can we not invest and spend money to make sure that the overall experience works out? Because everything is going to benefit the volunteers. And like I said, I know I'm talking to people who know what I'm talking about. Volunteering is literally good for your health. If you have healthier people, you're going to have healthier communities. And you put your money, you find ways to spend money for things that are important to you. period, point blank. That's why some people spend money on cars, some people spend some money on purses. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever is important to you is important to you. Nobody's going to dictate that. But saying one thing and it not adding up is where we have to start looking. So one of the things I wanted to share with you as well is calculating value and cost. So independent sector recently just put out their most recent value of volunteer time. They have an overall value, but then you can find it according to your location, and that will go, that's the part that you put in the calculating the cost. Brooke Campbell, CNP, CVA, has this phenomenal worksheet. It is a spreadsheet, and it literally, she goes through and asks you every aspect of your volunteer engagement department, aspect of the organization that you may not even have thought there's a cost. And like I said, she talked about the hidden cost of volunteer engagement, all of the things that you wouldn't even think about. She has this miraculous document that has done all the work. All she does is ask the questions, you plug everything in, and you find out what the actual cost of running volunteers is at your organization. And the reason why this is great is because then it really helps to open the eyes to say, oh my goodness, yes, we need to invest in this more, because it's actually, we haven't been putting the right amount of investment into it, and parts of this are suffering, or it's being borrowed from other places, or what happens if we go at this proactively instead of retroactively. So just kind of some things to think about. If you know her, reach out to her. If you don't know her, still reach out to her. Hit her up on LinkedIn, ask her for this document, because I'm telling you, it will rock your world. She does all of the work. The formulas are in there. Now, this is one of those times you could use that Excel spreadsheet that I was talking about. So, like I said, today was just a well-rounded, I wanted to introduce you to the characteristics of what we were talking about. I wanted to introduce you to the three main buckets that volunteer engagement touches. So just as a review, leadership involvement, planning, funding and resource allocation. And just, I want you to go back and think, as we're going through these, is this something that your organization is already doing and is doing well? Is it something that maybe there's room for improvement? Is it something that you're like, you know what, I had never even thought about that as it pertains to what our volunteer engagement strategy looks like at our organization? So I'll start again. Sorry, I got caught up. Leadership involvement. What does that look like, from executive leadership to your directors to supervisors? How involved are they? If maybe you're concerned that leadership, you don't have buy-in, think about it this way. If your executive leadership and they're not involved, if you're not communicating out what volunteers are doing, or they're not getting those touch points from whoever that person who's leading volunteers is in the organization, often the first time somebody in the C-suite or higher up hears about a volunteer, it's because they wrote a manifesto and they're sending it directly because they didn't like what the volunteer manager said, and so they're like, I'm going to the president, and they're sending this email. So now the first time that that they're hearing from volunteers is this negative interaction where they're like, oh, what is this? And they're sending it back down. But if you get ahead of that and you're always showing, this is what the volunteers are doing, here they are, invite them to participate in your events. We would have volunteer like at our volunteer dinner, and we'd have awards and all this kind of stuff. Our executive staff was the one that was presenting it to the volunteers. Anytime we had like a volunteer potluck or anything, we invited them, because now they have an opportunity to mingle and meet the executive leadership as people, as opposed to executive volunteer. They're meeting them, they're bonding over, they have the same amount of pets and children and interests. So now they've become people and not just numbers. So now they're getting that buy-in. They're hearing directly from the volunteers how their lives have been impacted from helping in the community, how being a part of the organization has changed their life. And it just gives a whole new perspective as opposed to a number on a piece of paper that they are not directly attached to. Okay, I know that was number one. I promise I'm not going through all that for all these. Okay, so number two, the planning, right? Three, funding and resource allocation. Number four, technology. Number five, training. Number six, onboarding. Number seven, supervision and support. And lucky number seven for me, again, I'm gonna say it again. Yes, I am all about get a professional, like a paid professional, volunteer engagement professional. Great. But if you cannot do that, whoever is leading the volunteers at your organization, set them up for success, give them the tools, get them connected, help them to have the resources that they need in order to lead the volunteers. Even if it is other duties as assigned, there are still a whole network of resources and people out to support somebody who is its other duties as assigned, because it is important. It is vital. It is vitally important. Recruitment and cultivation, communication, tracking, evaluation, growth and change, and collaboration. Working with other departments. This is the last thing that I'll say about this, and then I will get off the slide, but I'm just passionate about it. So, and y'all signed up to be here, so here we are. One of the greatest things that I've learned with collaboration is, when was the last time that you have spoken with your colleagues in another department? If you are the one in your organization that's leading volunteers, when was the last time that you sat and had a conversation with finance? When was the last time that you sat and had a conversation with marketing to understand their role and what they're doing in the organization? Gaining their understanding, gaining their perspective does two things. You now have a better understanding of how they operate and the stresses and things that they are under, but it also opens a door that you might be able to help be the solution to a challenge that they're having through utilizing volunteers. Now it becomes it's not just I'm working over here in my silo and they're over there. Now we're working together. Now we're talking and we're planning ahead. Now we're thinking on a larger scale. So if marketing and finance and the volunteer department all sit in a room, hey, volunteer, ask marketing, finance, treat the volunteers nice. When they walk, when they walk them by you, say hi. That will keep them here. Volunteers will have a great experience. They're going to go out and recruit for you. They're the best money that marketing cannot buy, mind you. They're going to go out, recruit, talk about the organization, help in the community, do all those things, get people excited. More people come in, more people volunteer. It is proven that where people volunteer, they tend to give. If they're giving donations. Finance is happy, marketing is happy, the community is happy. It's a win-win-win. So try to get out of your silos and really look for ways that you can collaborate within the organization. If you heard all of this and you're like, man, this is really great. Some of this stuff our organization says, some of it doesn't. I have no idea. Alive does do a volunteer engagement organizational assessment. If that is something that you're interested in, we have licensed providers and coaches who will walk you through a diagnostic, ask you a lot of questions similar as I did today, but a little bit more in depth, walk you through, and they give you this beautiful report at the end of all the strengths, room for improvement, and suggestions on how you can improve it. And you get like an overall score. So this was like I snapshotted from an example from an organization, and it has all of the characteristics and lets you know as an organization how you are doing overall. If it's something that you were interested in, we are happy to help. We are happy to do that. And then if you want to take those suggestions, Licensed providers can walk you through all of that too. Either way, whatever you do, even if all you do is you take these slides and you do it yourself and you go through and you're looking through what are the things that we are doing, start somewhere. How do you know where you're going to go if you don't even know where you've started? You have to know where you're starting. You have to have a benchmark from where to grow for, because if you're not growing, then what's the point? Right? We should be growing. We should be doing better. Tomorrow, we should be a little bit better than we are today. Next year, we should be better than we were the year before. And if we can track to see if we're not, then why? And what are we doing? Or if we're not better, was it a data informed decision? Maybe being better next year, we can't scale. So right now we maintain where we are and at least maintain well. But those are decisions that you can make when you have these characteristics in place. And everybody's not going to be 100% on every characteristic. Nobody's expecting that. But at least you know what makes up a healthy, holistic volunteer engagement strategy within the organization, so you know where to start. So I want to thank you all so much for listening to me passionately ramble on about all of this. We're going to open it up for questions. You can scan the QR code to get more information. You can follow live in these places, but I'm going to stop sharing and we can take questions.
That was if I must chime in myself, that was a great presentation. It's much needed, especially now. So that was amazing. We can go to the question and answers, the chat, the question and answer if you want to. We can go through.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So we have a question. I'm just gonna go in from how I see it. It says, do you offer a webinar that focus on strategic engagement of volunteers who are also employees?
We do not, but I partner with people who do, so I can get that information, because you're talking about like corporate volunteers within the organization, right?
That was a question from Carrie. It wasn't specific. It just says, do you offer a webinar that focus on strategic engagement of volunteers who also
Okay, she said yes.
employees?
She said yes,
Okay.
that is correct. So Alive doesn't at this time, but if you've heard of Realized Worth, they do a lot of those. So if you go to them, I would say go to them first and look up Realized Worth. They their niche is strategic volunteer engagement within like corporate volunteer engagement in that arena. So I'll send you over there because I know that they're going to have that.
Okay. That was a great question. The next question is, could you speak more about a live certification for a person not the org? So I guess individual.
Yes. So the CCVA, that's we are a partner with the CCVA. It's the Council for the Certification of Volunteer Administrators. I can drop the link in the chat. That is that certification that is there. And that's the one actually that we were talking about, that we have the study group for, that we help people prepare for their certification. But I will draw, and this is for individual volunteer engagement administrator certification. I just dropped it in the chat.
Okay, sounds great. Dominique wanted to know, do you work with and collect data on active duty military service members who volunteer in local communities?
So we as an organization, we do not. As our organization, the Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement, we work to support the leaders who are leading these organizations. However, there is somebody on our board who works with, I'm not sure if you heard, like Blue Star Families, and they track and work with veterans and in the military. So I am happy to connect you with her to have that conversation, because I'm sure that is something that they do. You can either email me, I'll put my email in the chat, or at volunteeralive.org. You can email me, and or if you don't hear from me like within the week, hit me up on LinkedIn, because sometimes our filter is extremely strong, and I may and may not have seen it. So if you don't hear from me in a week, hit me up on LinkedIn to make sure, but I will get you connected to Grace, who is on our board, and connect you to, so that you can have that conversation.
Okay, sounds great. We also have a question. How do you navigate having buy-in without money?
I think I need more details on that question. What exactly? Because there's a lot there. So can you be a little bit either more specific, or give me a little bit more details on the question?
Okay, that's from Jonathan. I'm just assuming. I think I get the question is, how do you have buy-in from your volunteers without having a normal a big budget for volunteers? I could be wrong. If Jonathan's still on, maybe he could chime in.
So what are we trying to get them to buy into? The mission, coming back, to having a program. And I guess in all of those cases, the biggest thing is starting with communication and relationship. Communication and relationship is free. And if you're showing that impact, showing impact is one of the first things to help gain buy-in. That is no cost except for one's time of digging in and doing it. But outside of specifically what they're asking for, it's a little bit difficult to answer that question.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of ways we could go with that.
All right. So I have an update right on time.
Okay.
How do you navigate having buy-in without money? What's the next step to alleviate budget concerns and still be rock stars?
Start small. Start small with what you have, right? I'm a big believer in dealing with what you have. Depending on what it is, listen, volunteers are some phenomenal people. If there's something that needs to get done, invite the volunteers to be a part of it. Sometimes people will volunteer to get parts of it done if it's something that they believe in. I've been in many times where volunteers were like, listen, I'll donate money to make it happen. We believe that this is important. We'll donate money to make this thing happen. So it really depends on what it is. And start with what you do have. It's one of those things, like one of the things in my life that I feel like is very important. Like, take what you have and multiply what you have. So even if you have zero, find a way. Listen, go to ChatGPT, say, how do I get this done without having money? It will give you some answers. But even if you have $1, there's a way to get it done and multiply it. So without being specific, without understanding the specific question, it's hard to like give that advice. But I say, number one, start small and start with what you have, and look for resources. There are if you Google anything today, there's all kinds of resources for things. Have partnership conversations. I remember when I started my nonprofit organization and we were putting on this big event, I walked up to the pizza parlor and was like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We want to do better for the community. Can you help? Some donated the food, some donated the bags that we were putting, some people were donating the stuff that we were putting in the bags. So having conversations and relationship, don't underestimate the power of relationship. Somebody once told me that the power of relationship can be more valuable than money. Relationships can be more valuable than money. So getting together, having conversations, deciding what the need is, trying to figure out who might be able to like be in a barter situation. All those different types of things can help. But again, it's kind of hard. I'm kind of like spitballing kind of big picture, but those are ways that we've been able to get things done without having money and then proving why we needed it and then got it funded later.
Okay, right. Um, I'm ran. What frameworks are available for volunteer managers to evaluate individual volunteer skills, particularly soft skills, during the recruitment process and to access skill development over time?
What was the first part of the question?
What frameworks are available for volunteer
Oh,
managers to evaluate individual volunteer skills, particularly soft skills, during the recruitment process and to assess skill development over time?
well, the very first thing is to make sure, like during the recruitment process, that you are asking those questions in the onboarding and all that so that you are gathering that data. Then it's being consistent with it. Are there software and things like that that help you with that? Yes, the link that I provided for you all that you're going to get, like I said, there's 19 different softwares that help with those exact things. You put in it what you are trying to analyze. Make sure the biggest best thing, the most important thing is junk in, junk out. So if you are not getting the correct data, you will not have correct data to assess. It's only going to spit out what you've put in. So making sure you're collecting that and that you are tracking it throughout. So maybe you're getting a set of data from when they first register, and then 3 months in, are you tracking their attendance? Are you tracking their skills? Are you setting up, because there's different ways where you can do like online learnings, and like they learn different modules and they have to graduate from that, and tracking all of that, and then going back and looking to see what the trend is, to see how they're doing, and then you can determine how you want to do it. Some of that could be having like a test. I hate to say it, but one of the things we used to do at one of our organizations, because um it was imperative that our volunteers knew certain aspects of the organization because they were helping other people find it. So each year we just kind of did like a refresher test to be like, are you aware of where everything is? And then it would help us understand where we need to add trainings to make sure that people get up to speed. So there are softwares out there that can do it for you. You can also do it in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't highly suggest it, but it can be done. But the most important thing is that you are gathering that data and then going from there. And then also, I know probably people like don't want to hear it, but Google. If you do a Google search, I'm telling you, there are free, like iotas of free templates and workshops and all those types of things that can help do more of a step-by-step assessment and things like that. I think somebody in there dropped Beth Steinhorn with VQ strategy. She has a lot of like worksheets and things like that. And Toby Johnson has a lot of things like that. So there's a lot of resources out there, but they can only help you if you track the data properly to begin with.
Great answer. It was a part two to this, Nicole. It said,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
no, it's how can insights from the 12 pillars be applied to volunteering within United Nations organization?
Within
That's
United
from
Nations.
Amran
I'm sorry.
organization. Yes, that was from Amran. How can insights from the 12 pillars be applied to volunteering within United Nations organization?
Well, the 12 pillars are pretty standard. It doesn't matter if you're talking to volunteer professionals in England, if you're talking to them in uh, South America, if you're talking to them in Australia. And I know this because I've talked to people in Australia and Ireland and England and Canada and internationally, and the basic pillars are still the same. You know, tracking data is tracking data regardless. It might look a little bit differently, but it still needs to be done. Treating volunteers well is treating volunteers well, regardless of
Yeah.
where you are. Anywhere you walk in and somebody doesn't say hi to somebody, there's going to be, you know, unless it's like don't say hi because it's going to set off an alarm. Who knows, whatever. But a lot of these things are universal, and it's stuff that we're talking about literally all over the world. So taking these things and getting a plan and strategically implementing it, there's a many consultants that will help. Alive, that's what our service enterprise program is about, helping or take organizations understanding what it is, come up with a plan, and then implementing the plan. I can't give like specific advice because there's specific, it's very nuanced, but generally the principles stand. And I can say that confidently because I've had these same conversations with people all over the world, and it's the same thing.
Okay. Our next question is by Rachel. She wants to know, how can we learn more about retention and investing in volunteers themselves?
So if you want to learn more, at Alive, we have an archive of videos given by experts in the field that have several webinars that can walk through all of those things. Getting volunteers to invest in themselves, that's having a conversation that if it's something that you believe in, tell them that and tell them why. Share with them why. And if you want the help with that, there are consultants and people that are out there that can help. With like at Alive, again, like we the beautiful thing about it is that you are able to connect, network with people all over, not only where you are, but nationwide, to be able to learn from others and um and share resources for these types of things. These are a lot of really, really great questions, but it's nothing that I could answer in like the 60 seconds that I have left, and that it would be enough for you to go and implement. There are many consultants. If I'm telling you, if you go out and Google like retention, what that looks like, you can go and do that. Again, our members at Alive, that's literally why we exist, is to provide that type of information and that connection. And they have access to archives and monthly webinars that go through things like this, because volunteer engagement is a huge thing, and we have to attack it like piece by piece. But anyway, I know we're at time, so I'm gonna stop talking.
That was great. That was great. We had if you could put your LinkedIn in the chat, there were several more questions that that people would like to be answered. And you said that, it's best ways to engage in LinkedIn. This was a phenomenal presentation. I learned a lot, and that's what I do is corporate engagement and partnership. So I really appreciate this presentation.
You're very
I
welcome.
want to
Like I
thank.
said, oh, I'm sorry. Last thing I'll say is
Okay.
my goal for this, if you are thinking about volunteer engagement differently, then my job here is done today.
Yeah. Nicole, I would like to thank you. This, like I said again, I cannot say it enough. This was a great presentation. It's time for this session to come to an end. I want to thank everyone who joined this presentation, and we'll be sure to send the recordings of the session out within a few days. And I hope everyone have a great, amazing day.
Bye-bye.